and thank you for joining us for this session on accelerated learning, induction, and mentoring. My name is Megan Steiner. I am the IU13 School Improvement Team member focused on human capital. And this is the last session of this series. So if you have been joining us for many of the other sessions of this series, thank you for joining in. I hope you're having a good end of the school year, or if it's already happened, I hope you've had a good end of the school year. And I wanted to mention that while this session and this series are about supporting schools and educators to be effective in accelerated learning, these are, of course, practices that also apply in the long term for effective induction and mentoring programs. So this is part of a series on establishing effective system conditions for accelerating learning. And as I mentioned, this is the last in the series, so thank you for joining us this far. Now, the agenda, as you can see here, I will start with the purpose for the session, overview of what an effective induction program entails, an overview of effective mentoring, with it mentoring being one component of an induction program, ongoing evaluation and adjustment of these programs, some suggested resources, and I'll explain how to easily access those. And then we'll have a Q&A panel, which consists of some of our colleagues from the School District of Philadelphia, Harrisburg School District, and the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School. And they'll be sharing a variety of approaches and perspectives they have on their mentoring and induction programs. And finally, we'll have an interactive component with breakout room discussions for you to discuss your own programs, challenges, and so forth with colleagues. So as I mentioned, we'll start with the purpose for this session. So as you are perhaps aware, studies have found that mentoring is associated with longer teacher retention and generally improved teacher effectiveness. Also, high quality induction and mentoring programs can positively impact teacher retention, teacher practice, and student achievement. New teachers, beginning teachers who are engaged in high quality induction programs often report feeling more confident. They are more likely to seek help from colleagues, and they are more likely to stay in their classrooms to be retained. Furthermore, effective induction and mentoring can support accelerated learning, what we're focusing on going into this school year, because as with last year, new teachers are entering their first year in a different context than they would usually have. And this presents an opportunity to rethink how school systems plan, implement, and measure induction and mentoring supports, and how they can prepare new teachers for effective accelerated learning and effective practice overall. So first, for an overview of components of effective induction programs. Induction includes mentoring within that umbrella, as well as orientation, training, opportunities for collaboration among new educators, any other way of supporting new educators in your systems. Now, your LEAs are likely already engaged in many effective induction practices, and this overview can help you think through which practices you are using well, which you may want to adjust, and which you may want to implement. So first, we have strategically involving stakeholders, of course, a step in any meaningful system planning. So as I go through this overview, think about what are we doing, what might we want to adjust or adapt. So first, we have including a variety of voices in the conversation when planning or adjusting a program for induction and mentoring, including those of principals, mentors, induction or professional learning coordinators, union or association leaders, human capital officers, and other LEA leaders. Early career teachers also participate in some conversations to provide insight into their experience. clear roles and responsibilities for administrators. And I'm sorry, I'm getting a strange notice on my computer that something is wrong with Zoom. If you can still hear me and see me, can I just get a quick thumbs up? Awesome, thank you. Just wanted to check in on that. I will ignore that notice. All right. Anyway, so early career teachers also participate in some conversations to provide insight into their experience. You also want to provide clear roles and responsibilities for administrators, because induction programs can be more effective if principals receive training to make the most of the program. So principals themselves can support mentors and the entire induction program by setting expectations of mentors and beginning teachers to participate in the program using standards as a guide to effective practice. Principals should also communicate with mentors to learn how the program is going in their school and to ensure mentor training is aligned to their beginning teachers' needs. So next we have tailoring the program and supports to meet your educators' needs. So ideally, induction programs are flexible and respond to the needs of individual teachers. They use an early assessment of new teachers' strengths and their challenges to determine what trainings and other supports to offer. Ongoing professional learning is targeted to the needs of beginning teachers, including opportunities for meetings and other ongoing communications with other new teachers. And ongoing communications can mean everything from in-person meetings to opportunities to be on a group chat that is focused on solutions to what they're facing every day. This past year plus has shown us a variety of ways for virtual, synchronous, or asynchronous collaboration among educators as well. And that going forward can be useful for new teachers and other new educators. So next we have components of effective mentoring programs. So specifically the component of interactions between the mentees, the new educators, and those more experienced educators assigned to mentor them. So first we have wide mentor recruitment and rigorous mentor selection. So mentors need training and support, because it's not enough, of course, to just be good at teaching students. That's an impressive skill, but given the differences between teaching students and mentoring adults, it's effective to provide further training to mentors. So comprehensive mentor support should include the following: clear expectations about the knowledge, skills, abilities, and dispositions that mentors must have to develop beginning teachers' skills. Professional learning opportunities that are carefully sequenced and differentiated to meet the needs of mentors to help them grow in their role, learn new mentoring strategies, and reflect on practice. Ongoing formative assessment, feedback, and goal-setting processes that parallel those of beginning teachers. And opportunities for meetings and other ongoing communication among mentors. So just like there can be ongoing communication, collaboration, support among mentees, you can also support that among mentors. So next we have some more about training, effectively training mentors and the content of that training. So content of professional learning for mentors can include common needs of new teachers and implications for the mentor role, roles and responsibilities of participants in the mentoring program, including the roles and responsibilities of mentors, new teachers, administrators, and other colleagues, how mentors will track, describe, and report their mentoring activities, their interactions with their mentees, communication and collaboration skills for working with mentees, cultural responsiveness, coaching and observation approaches, and frameworks to observe the progress of teaching and learning. So to understand how are their mentees progressing in their own practice. So as leaders, you want to be able to ideally support effective mentor-mentee collaboration. And bear in mind, and this is something that our panelists have also emphasized in prior conversations I had with them, that mentees are supporting and observing, but not evaluating. Make sure that all stakeholders involved bear this in mind. Designate time for mentor-mentee interaction, whether that is during school, after school, virtually, or all of the above. Mentor-mentee meetings may address actionable and specific feedback for the mentees to improve their practice, professional teaching standards, student data, and beyond mentors only talking with teachers about general concerns, mentors should focus on teacher growth and development with an emphasis on student learning. This includes reflection, goal setting, the analysis of student learning data, and regular cycles of observation and feedback. So our last section of this overview before we go into the panel is an overview of ongoing evaluation and adjustment of induction programs. Because it's, as much as it's always important to be evaluating your work, when we're thinking about making adjustments or just checking in with how well your programs are doing so far, of course, you don't want to do all that work without also assessing how well is it doing in terms of mentee practice and student learning. So some components and questions to consider when deciding how to evaluate an induction and mentoring program include: who should be involved in planning and implementing the evaluation? Will the Educator Induction Committee or another critical stakeholder group play a role? What data will be collected and who will analyze the data? And we'll talk more about that in the coming slides. How will the evaluation be used to improve the induction program? And importantly, the final question, what will you do after you've reviewed the evaluation information? How will you make sure and who will make sure that you act on it as you continue to make changes? So some metrics to consider when deciding, how will you evaluate the program and how well it is meeting its goals. So data sources that are required in Pennsylvania by the Pennsylvania Educator Induction Plan guidelines include student assessment data, data on instructional models, stakeholder surveys, and information from previous induction program evaluations. Those are things that you may already be familiar with because they are laid out in the induction plan guidelines. Further, you can consider using data to determine program quality, such as whether the induction and mentoring program is meeting the goals expressed in your LEAs plan. Mentor quality, so how well are the mentors doing at supporting their mentees, including their impact on improving new teacher practice, and the perceptions among mentees of their mentor effectiveness. How well is their mentor doing? And finally, effectiveness of professional learning for new teachers. So the impact of these professional learning opportunities provided for new teachers on changing, and not just on, how well do people think these professional learning opportunities are helping them, but actually are instructional practices changing and are outcomes for students changing? So finally, gathering data for evaluating these programs. So think about whether you have or could begin to gather these types of quantitative and qualitative data. So again, going to the Pennsylvania Educator Induction Plan guidelines, they suggest using the following: participant satisfaction surveys, which can be for new teachers, mentors, principals, and Educator Induction Committee members; analysis of programs and resources provided; overview or interviews and focus groups; and observation of mentees in practice. Additional implementation data might consider mentor-mentee interaction logs, new teacher portfolios or other work from their practice, classroom videos, student work, any additional student data like attendance or classroom management data, teacher retention rates, and any teacher effectiveness data such as that from the multiple measures in Pennsylvania's Educator Effectiveness System. Finally, we have just quickly some suggested resources before we go into the panel. So you will see that on each of the coming slides that mention a suggested resource, there is a URL, tinyurl.com/induction and mentoring. And I'd encourage you now to type that into your browser. And I will also, if someone could paste that in the chat for us, folks can also follow it that way. So that will take you to a Google site, a very simple Google site with a description of all the resources I will be mentioning, and of course, links to them so that you can maybe bookmark that page, save it for later in case any of those resources are things you may want to check out or to share with colleagues. So I'll just briefly mention some of these. We have, you may have heard of the GTL, the Center for Great Teachers and Leaders. They have a mentoring and induction toolkit that's quite comprehensive. And not everyone will want to go through every single component, but it has some ready to use resources that LEAs and schools can use. And I wanted to flag in particular a module on collecting evidence of program success, which relates to the slides I just went over, and also a module on mentor recruitment, selection, and assignment. So going into next school year, thinking about how you'll do those processes, you may want to use the workbook and other resources for making decisions about recruiting, selecting mentors, and assigning them to mentees. So next we have another resource from the same center, 10 mentoring and induction challenges in rural schools. We know now these are strategies that may be helpful to any school system, but sometimes in rural schools, if they encounter challenges like it may be harder to find enough mentors, this is a resource that is intended specifically for that audience to help them with some challenges they may encounter in their mentoring programs. The New Teacher Center has a few quite useful mentoring resources, including mentor practice standards. So these apply to a number of components of a mentoring and induction program, including selection and recruitment. Also developing and professional learning for mentors. And finally, that important last component, assessing mentor quality and growth. And if you've just joined us, I know a couple people have just joined us recently. I would encourage you again to follow that URL at the top of each of these slides so that you can see a little bit more about each of these resources and also follow the links to them. So also from the New Teacher Center, there's an overview of a program called the Electronic Mentoring for Student Success Program. And basically this describes one example of a program that uses effective practices for mentoring, as well as a creative solution for when there are not enough mentors available locally. So schools who use such an approach may want to pair their new educators with a remote mentor, but also with an in-district mentor to familiarize the mentee with the LEA culture, procedures, and so forth. But this, building on our familiarity with using remote strategies from the past year, this is another program for, one way to overcome an obstacle of not having enough people who could be effective mentors locally. Just a couple more. We have a tool from the Georgia Department of Education that is useful for assessing the effectiveness of a teacher induction program. And it indicates the roles that different entities can take in supporting effective teacher induction, including local institutes of higher education, the LEAs themselves, mentors, and novice teachers. And this document, it's a tool with space for the users to record data collection on each component. So how you'll be evaluating different components, and notes providing further information and evidence. Finally, I wanted to share a couple of our panelists are from Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School, and they shared with us some specific tools they use for pre and post observation conferences to enhance the effectiveness of observation and feedback, as well as their induction handbook, which provides specific guidance and big picture guidance on their mentoring program. So again, if you haven't already, you can follow the URL at the top of this page and use it to access a very simple Google site with information about and links to all of the resources I just explained. So finally, the exciting part where you don't just have to hear me talk anymore, we will go to our Q&A panel. So I will ask our panelists to take turns just introducing yourself and your role and the LEA you work for. So we will start with Nick, if that's all right, and then we can go on from there, just with our panelists briefly introducing themselves.
Hi, everybody. My name's Nick. I am a professional learning specialist in the Office of Teaching and Learning in the School District of Philadelphia. And it's really exciting to be here with all of you today. I'm going to hand it off to Sherry next.
Good morning. Thank you, Nick. My name is Sherry Kutz. I'm an instructional coach for the Harrisburg Area School District, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I will hand it off to Miranda.
Good morning. I am Miranda Kreshak. I also work for Harrisburg School District. I served this past school year as English Department Chair for the John Harris campus. I was the Dean of Students for 11th and 12th grade, and I also just finished my internship for the Assistant Director of the Office of Academics. And next I see Christy next.
Hello, I'm Christy Waldrop. I'm a special education teacher here at PA Cyber. And I'm going to pass it off to Angelica.
Hello, everyone. My name is Angelica Schaefer, and I am a life skills teacher here at PA Cyber. We will go to Erin next.
Me, hi, I'm Irina Perlstein. I am the currently the principal at First Philadelphia Preparatory Charter School in Philadelphia, but serving on this panel representing my previous position, which was as a professional learning specialist with the School District of Philadelphia.
All right, thank you so much. So we have an entire 6 panelists. So thank you to all of you for joining us. And we have, let's see, 10 questions for them. And then once they have had a chance to respond to those questions, we will also invite anyone else to type any questions you have for them into the chat. So with that, our first question, which is for our panelists from PA Cyber. How are mentors selected in your LEA, and what characteristics does a strong mentor have, in your opinion?
All right. So this is Angelica Schaefer. At PA Cyber, mentors are not volunteered. They don't volunteer. They're actually compensated. The instructional staff who's interested in becoming a mentor completes an application. And then that application is looked over by the people that are in charge of the induction team. And then they follow the handbook and figure out who's most qualified to be a mentor. Something else that's a little bit different maybe from the other schools, they try to align them with the new teachers that are being hired. So, you know, do you have experience mentoring, or is the new teacher going to be teaching a similar subject like you are? Are they in the same grade level as you? But being a good mentor, I think we discussed, Christy and I, patience is a big one, and knowledgeable for sure.
Awesome, thank you. So our next question, building off of a good mentor, how would you describe a good mentor-mentee relationship? So first we'll go to Harrisburg with this question. How would you describe a good mentor-mentee relationship? And what can school or LEA leaders do to help mentors and mentees build such a relationship?
Well, first, to answer the description of a good mentor-mentee relationship, I think one of the finest qualities is that it's open and honest, that they can both communicate freely, and there's a lot of two-way communication that's occurring, including active listening. Also in this relationship, I think the expectations of both parties from each other should be very clearly defined, and making sure that both are actively engaged participants is also really important. The ability to establish trust and reliability and a mutual respect for each other's differences and experiences and knowledge, I think are really vital in creating that positive and encouraging relationship. And also both of them being able to acknowledge that the other has a lot to offer. So to add to this, Miranda has some specific examples on our mentor certification program and new teacher orientation program. Miranda?
Right. Yes, thank you, Sherry. So some of the specifics that we provided for our mentors were trained on the roles of a mentor, effective mentoring and relationship building, first year needs and types of support, providing feedback to adult learners, and then just the logistics of mentoring. So prior to the school year even starting, we provided our mentors with a 6-hour training that gave them the research, the information, the practices, and the strategies to really foster a positive and productive mentor-mentee relationship. And then during the new teacher orientation training, we provided opportunities for our mentors and mentees to really discuss those roles of both the mentor and the mentee. We were able to review requirements together, establish those initial relationships with the support of our building leadership. It's so important having all vested parties on the same page and receiving that same information at the same time really fosters a good relationship amongst everyone.
Then you had also asked a second part of the question, which was what can school or LEA leaders do to help mentors and mentees build such a relationship? So some ideas on that are that first and foremost, the LEA can and certainly should take a proactive stance in the notification and preparation of mentors. And even previous to the mentor training, just having a complete annual agenda of meeting dates and due dates for documentation, topics for the meeting, all of that allows for planning and preparation of both the mentor and the mentee. Accessibility and availability of the LEA, I think, are extraordinarily important. And also having the provision of resources, having resources available and consistently provided. For example, resources pertaining to specific teaching strategies or curricular needs or information about new teacher orientation. Those are all crucial to the mentor and the mentee being fully supported. I think an example of being accessible and available was a Google Classroom that was created for our new teacher orientation information. We also had discussion boards and a lot of two-way communication avenues. And I think through having that platform, the resources were really organized and readily available for everyone who needed to access them. Miranda, would you like to add some specific examples?
Yes, one thing that we noticed was very important. We're making sure that school leaders were just as much involved as the mentors and the mentees. So we made sure that all of our school leaders were provided the training information, the induction handbook, access to all of our online resources via Google Classroom so they can fully support both the mentors and the mentees. And as I had indicated, we had trainings prior to the school year even starting. And on our last day of our training, we built in an entire half-day session for the mentors and the mentees to meet directly with building level administration to really support those relationships at the building level, because we're looking at, a K-12 system. So there are those building specific needs, information, logistics, resources, that it's really important that everyone is comfortable both at the district level, but then also have those comfortabilities and comfort and relationships that are established right away at the building level.
All right, thank you both of you, and thank you for those examples as well that you provided. So for Angelica and Christy from PA Cyber, the same question about a good mentor-mentee relationship and what can school system leaders do to help build such a relationship?
I think to reiterate a lot what the previous panels were saying, open and honest, having that time to be able to get together and not be afraid to talk. This is my first year here at PA Cyber, and my mentor was very open. We discussed lots of things. I came from a brick and mortar school to a cyber charter school, and it was vastly different than what I was used to. And she was there to guide me and help me. She was very open and allowed for that teaching. And PA Cyber also allowed us to have that set aside time where we could meet and discuss things. And I think having that built into the schedule, not like scrambling to find time, but having that already built into the, your daily schedule, your weekly schedule. So someone's not, missing out on class time or needed prep time is a great thing as well.
Awesome, thank you. And also that piece about the scheduling and the logistics, that's helpful to think about as well. So the next question, we'll go back to Harrisburg for the next question. How would you describe an effective mentor-mentee meeting, the actual interaction? And what activities are useful for mentors and mentees to do together?
I believe that the most productive meeting, as with any meeting, is one with a clear plan and purpose. As we're going into those meetings, we have to have our clear expectations and reflective practices. Depending on what is going on, our discussion could include events and issues that have arisen, reflections, steps for moving forward, goal setting, which it is so important that we're allowing our mentees to have a voice and choice in their goal setting, resource sharing, role playing and modeling between mentors and mentees, or inclusion of other vested parties in the agenda topic. For example, if we know that our mentees are really needing support with our special education students, we want to bring those parties into our meetings. The most significant factors in all of these interactions are just having that constructive feedback, being encouraging to the mentees, and really having that positive attitude and being open and honest. Some other components that really affect a really strong positive mentor and mentee meeting. Like I said, just they're planned, they're purposeful, we have a clear agenda, we have clear expectations, and it is so important that we are always approaching everything with a solutions-focused lens. We really want to have discussions revolving around those issues and events, and really as the mentors reflecting upon them, but also allowing mentees to learn how to reflect upon those issues. Identifying our next steps and making sure to follow up. We need to make sure, as our new teachers have additional needs, we really need to make sure we are following up with whatever next steps are needed. Again, always included those other vested parties, whether it is our ELD teachers, our special ed teachers, our coaches, our administrators, whoever needs to be involved in these meetings, depending on the content, really giving them their choice in their goal setting and where they want to go professionally and how we can really support them. Really focusing on that, that we work with our kids. The same thing applies to adults, that 4-to-1 ratio of those positive and negative comments and feedback, and just making sure that we are always available to provide resources, examples, and some of the greatest things we can do is just modeling, just really modeling what this looks like. And I'm going to turn it over to Sherry for part 2.
Okay. So the activities that are really useful for mentors and mentees to do together that we have found are a lot of reflective and metacognitive activities. Reflection allows teachers to determine what went well for them and really where their opportunities for growth are. And when we can identify where those opportunities for growth are, we see growth occurring. Lesson planning, state testing requirements, analyzing data, being able to assist with the adjustment of instruction based on that analysis that's done together, benchmark testing, additional professional development outside of the district, and simply even just how to enter your grades into the program that you have. Any type of documentation or communication working on that together and making sure that it's done on a gradual release model. Some specific examples based on our mentor certification and new teacher orientation were that the mentor participated in building-based sessions with the mentees. And that was really beneficial because there was a lot more clarification and support that could be given because everybody heard the same information and they were on the same page. The why to this is because as people come from different areas and move into new LEAs, there are a lot of nuances that are district specific. And so understanding specific programs and curriculums and procedures allows for teachers to be successful. Also working together with new teachers provides not only information, but that ability for the mentees to see things being applied. And that really creates buy-in and an understanding of the why behind a lot of the procedures and policies that they are becoming a part of. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you both of you for focusing on, the importance of goal setting, of being goal focused, but also being flexible and focusing on the why behind everything you're discussing. And now for the same questions about mentor-mentee interactions, we'll go to Nick and Irina to talk about the School District of Philadelphia.
Great, thank you so much. So we, for our induction program, don't have our mentors so strongly involved with our induction participants outside of the program. But within the induction program, so meaning our induction mentors don't go into the classrooms to meet with the teachers. But within the program, we do allot 30 minutes per session for the induction mentors to check in one-on-one with the teachers and the mentees to assess their progress on completion for their induction portfolio, and also just to generally check in with them one-on-one. I'm going to pass it to Nick to talk about the additional mentoring that we're doing with the School District of Philadelphia.
Yeah, we also offer mentoring for our newly hired teachers that are hired in an untraditional manner. For example, teachers that might be hired in February or March or April. We provide them with the opportunity to receive a high quality mentor. And in that particular position, I really take the stance with the mentors that mentoring is a feeling. Think back to a mentor that you had when you were first beginning your career. Most times people associate their first mentor with a very, very positive emotion. So we want to make sure that we're tapping into that feeling that comes with it. And so we have a lot of conversations about why we're there. We're there to support our new and novice teachers in their new role. And we're here to increase the teacher satisfaction. We're here to serve. And so that is a unique approach we take with our untraditional hires and the mentoring we do with them, is that mentoring needs to be flexible, and it really centers around one essential question where the mentor asks the teacher, what do you want to focus on today? Rather than the mentor trying to figure it out and put the pieces together, just ask the question. Ask the teacher what they need, because that might change from moment to moment, day to day, week to week, but then using that to find the through line and the best ways to support that teacher. So I think that mentoring as a feeling is a really important concept for us to consider.
Thank you. Yeah, I love that idea of mentoring as a feeling. So for anything else from Philadelphia before we go on to our next question? We all good? Awesome. All right. So for our next question, in your opinion and your experience, what kind of training is most important for mentors? And we'll go first to Angelica and Christy from PA Cyber.
All right. We thought that it's super important to know the school's policies, procedures, resources, who you're going to reach out to if you need help, if you need something. We spend a lot of time focusing on the framework. When Christy and I would meet monthly, we talked a lot about the Danielson framework. What domain are you having trouble with? What can we do to incorporate that in our classroom? How are you doing that? What is your action plan for that? So a lot of time spent on the domain, I think, is important. Professional code of professional conduct, how to present yourself really, because like Christy said, the cyber setting might be a little bit different. There might be some do's and don'ts that we need to focus on a little bit more. And then the educator effectiveness, because you're being evaluated. So what do you need to know for that, which again ties back to the framework as well.
All right, thank you. And for a little bit more on that topic of what training is most important for mentors, we'll go to Sherry and Miranda from Harrisburg School District.
All right, thank you. We believe that mentors really need to receive and see the same training information that our mentees are receiving. We find that it's very difficult for a mentor to really give instruction and support on information in which they are unaware. So we have some specific examples for the mentor certification program that we ran this past school year. So due to everything that was going on with COVID, the training for both mentors and mentees was provided online. And the certification for our mentors lasts 3 years. But the resources are available to all parties at all times via Google Classroom. So once our district trains and hires a mentor, they're qualified to mentor new teachers for the next 3 school years. And so due to a high teacher turnover rate, just like Nick was saying with his district, it's important that a new teacher shouldn't wait until the next school year, if hired during a school year, to really receive that information and training to be mentored and to complete our induction program. So we have trainings that are held monthly to train our teachers who have been hired after the initial training. And additional mentors, we have set that have already been trained to take on new hires. So we already have that all set up. So our actual induction program spans 1 full year or 1 full school year from start to finish, regardless of start date during that cycle. So we have that it is ongoing. And then during that training, initial training we provided for our mentors, we really focused on topics and information design for mentors to really best serve those mentees' needs. Excuse me. So we really focused on, we trained them on the roles of a mentor. So we really broke down what are the roles of a mentor? What does mentoring new teachers look like? That role between, are you consultant, collaborator, coach, and just allowing for personal reflection. We really taught them about effective mentoring and relationship building, really breaking down what effective mentoring is, what it means to be a great mentor, the do's and don'ts of teaching, and then strategies to really build relationships. We additionally focused on those first year needs and types of support. So we really looked at and had the mentors look at specific first year teacher needs and types of support that are unique to a new teacher. We focused a lot on providing feedback and adult learners. We all know that an adult learner is not the same as, a child or adolescent learner. So really focusing on adult learners, providing effective feedback to them. And we were able to provide a lot of new teacher scenarios that our mentors were able to work through to kind of practice providing different types of support to their mentees. And then we kind of brought it all together and really looked at the logistics of mentoring. We really took that time to review our entire induction handbook, really reflect on that, and then have our mentors do an evaluation of that training so we are able to tweak and continue to serve the mentor and the mentee's greatest needs. And then after we did that with the mentors, we had our induction training, which included all the topics for new teachers, information that was covered by our district administration and staff. And then that information is provided to our mentors to support our mentees. So we really had a 4-day training initially for our mentees after we provided that initial training to our mentors. And we really broke down looking at our district leadership, the overview of our school district, the Danielson framework, our human resources supports, Act 48, data resources, district assessment maps, curriculum, instruction. We focused on English language development, special education services, parent family engagement, school counseling services, McKinney-Vento, designing effective instruction, classroom culture. We provided useful links from our district coaches. And then we were able to just kind of have an overview at the end. We had the mentees do an evaluation survey as well, so we can really reflect on their greatest needs. We provided union information. And then again, as I indicated before, we committed that entire half day of the last day of training for our mentors, our mentees, and our building leadership to really spend that time together. we're able to compile materials, and we have that archived in that centralized location via Google Classroom. So at any time, anyone can pull up anything. And then we were also very clear with expectations. These are our dates. These are our makeups. This is all of the information. And we try to be incredibly proactive to ensure, the attendance and success of the program.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you for your answer to that question. And the next question is specific to this school year, and we'll start with the School District of Philadelphia. So especially since the beginning of the pandemic, teachers and students have often faced challenging teaching and learning circumstances. For new teachers, this is probably not what they expected in their first year. As we prepare for another what may be intense school year, what can LEAs do to support or train mentors so that they in turn are better able to support mentee teachers?
So I'm going to start by just echoing what Nick had said earlier about mentorship being a feeling, that we really do need to be aware of the emotional health of our staff as well as the emotional health of our students. And so I think part of answering that need is thinking about the ways in which we are preparing our mentors with their own training on emotional intelligence, on adult development, and things of that nature. And so in terms of our induction program, that's definitely something that we have incorporated into our mentor training, really recognizing those different even elements of adult development and understanding emotional intelligence as it pertains to developing others, to be best prepared to serve staff in that way. I think the only other thing I would add here is just thinking about all of the things that a new teacher has to take on and helping them to really prioritize what is most important to understand coming into not only their first year of teaching or maybe their second year of teaching, but also coming into an experience where many folks are still learning how to implement best practices in a virtual space. And so really figuring out for that prioritization for new teachers is going to be key at the start of this coming school year. And I'll pass it to Nick for any other follow-up.
Thanks. Yeah, that really important point that Irina brought up there that I'm connecting with is that listening to teachers is important, finding out what they need. We were going out, we were doing trainings left and right? We would get the formal trainings, here's what you do, here's the steppers, and we were finding out that our teachers really wanted to see it in action. They wanted to see what it looked, sounded, and felt like. And we were putting out just these formal trainings that were going out. We have over 200 K-12 schools. There are so many different things that are going on, even within a cohort of schools in the same geographical area in the city. So it was really important for us to find ways for teachers to tap in and find ways for them to take the learning that they needed instead of us just assuming we knew what that was. So a couple of things that we actually did that really helped with that was we started modeling best practices in any of our workshops or trainings. And we would have these little meta moments where we would just say, hey, time out. Did you see what I just did there? And then that allows them, because we're in a virtual space as well, allows them to see how we're navigating and see that human aspect of facilitating and teaching for them. And then also our teachers really enjoyed watching pre-recorded panels from other teachers in other districts that are doing it. They were amazed and fascinated. They're like, oh my goodness, they're already doing it. And it's not as hard as I thought it was, because there are some kind of mental buildup there that makes you think, oh my goodness, it's this magical thing, where when we demystify it and it really became tangible for teachers. And then lastly, having a really great Educator Hub website where teachers could go and access information around best practices, pre-recorded videos. If they missed a training, they could watch it at any time on our website. And so giving them access any time of the day or night, rather than those pre-scheduled times when everybody just has to get it at the same time. So that differentiation was really key.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Sorry, did I cut you off, or is that? All right, awesome. All right, so moving on, the same question to Harrisburg about, for new teachers, especially now, what can LEAs do to support or train mentors to better support their mentees, during the different circumstances we have going into next school year?
Sure. So As we were thinking about this in our district, we sat down and we really discussed what are the needs of mentors? Because if we can define that, we can certainly say how the LEA can help with that, right? So some things that we found are mentors are really in need of the tools necessary to be able to be flexible and adaptable in any instructional environment. So whether that's online, hybrid, face-to-face, they really need the knowledge and the tools to support their mentees and to be able to proactively plan for any environment that we may be in. That'll enable the mentors to empower their mentees if they have the training as well. Also, I think mentors need to feel that they can adequately assist their mentees in the transition from one type of environment to another. The LEA's role in that would be to provide information and expectations well in advance and to provide the necessary supports. Specific building-based trainings outside of district trainings, I think would be something that the LEA could provide. I think sometimes district-wide trainings are very generalized. And when we can provide a training that is specific to buildings based on what their individual needs are, based on their goals, their comp plan goals, things of that nature, I think that that is really helpful. And another thing is to have teachers have a voice and choice and differentiation in that professional development, to speak to what Nick was saying earlier. I also think giving mentees the training and the empowerment to provide peer-to-peer coaching and training empowers them and creates this sense of strength and diversity within your staffing population. Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. So this next question about the School District of Philadelphia. Last year, your LEA decided to provide some new teacher induction training asynchronously due to the shift to remote training and remote environment generally. Do you have any advice on how LEA leaders could determine what training is better to offer synchronously versus asynchronously?
So I guess this really comes back to what Nick had said about modeling best practices. We found that teachers really wanted to see things in action. And so when determining what content can be synchronous versus asynchronous, the first categorization for that would be, what do people really need to see in action? What makes sense to be able to participate in and respond to in order to really gain that skill best, versus what can really be presented to someone in a more straightforward manner. Although I'll say the Educator Hub website that Nick was speaking to earlier has plenty of recorded sessions where there was that interaction between participants and facilitators. But in determining for like specific content through the induction program, for example, we really tried to make as much of it synchronous as possible and really have the asynchronous pieces be things that we wanted teachers to go back to independently and look at, or things that we thought that they may need to personalize more for their own practice. And so it would be helpful for them to just do that asynchronously versus something that's more widely applicable that we could do all together as a group. But I will say that we also tried to make as many recordings of sessions available as possible so that folks, particularly because this year for Philadelphia, we provided so much more professional learning content than we have in other years. It was really helpful to have a bank of all of those recordings available for teachers, especially new teachers. Again, thinking about that prioritization, there is always so much going on, so much information being shared. And so another thing that can be really helpful is to think about how you're cataloging those prior recordings for teachers so that they can most easily go back and access that learning over time as things become more relevant or as they improve in their practice and are ready for the next step of something or other. And I'll pass it to Nick to add on anything else.
You really killed that response. That was that took most of my stuff. But there is one thing I would add, time is never on our side. So thinking critically about how you can leverage asynchronous and synchronous work in order to maximize your time. I can give a pre-reading and ask some reflection questions ahead of time so that I have more time in my synchronous session to unpack, to discuss, to challenge, and move people forward that way. And that's a really great strategy for teachers to understand as well, right? For them to know that not everything has to happen within the two bells. We can be smart in how we assign tasks for students ahead of time. So when they come in and they're with us and have that valuable one-on-one time, we can really make leaps forward.
Awesome, thanks. And also for Philadelphia about training, how do you make ongoing decisions about the content for induction training for new teachers?
So for the induction program, we are always modifying that content year to year. We always go back and review our modules. And the one thing that has really come to the forefront in all of our content this year is equity, racial and social justice, academic equity for all students. And so this has been a big overhaul of our entire induction program over the last calendar year, really investigating each session to ensure that there is some element, some conversation that we're having with teachers pertaining to the overall content of that module that shows teachers the connections they should be making related to racial and social equity and justice in their own practice. As per, for example, some of our content relates to communicating with families, conflict resolution, thinking about engaging students in learning. And so all of those topic areas have relevance to this conversation that, the ether of our culture is now presently even more engaged in than ever, which is this idea of justice for all. And so I think that's something that we're really trying to focus on through induction. Something that we grappled with early on, to be transparent, was the fact that induction is a course that's mandatory. We have a captive audience. Folks are not opting in to these conversations. And so we had to have a conversation as a team where we decided what part of the equity conversation we wanted to provide for folks that should not be optional. And then what parts of those equity conversations we wanted to transition to other professional learning opportunities for teachers that were maybe more in-depth, maybe more personal, maybe could potentially even be more painful for folks as they uncover elements of their own personal identity or discuss particular issues that happen in schools and around the city and the country. So I think, I would say for sure, I would absolutely encourage all districts to be doing that kind of work as well, really finding a way to make racial and social justice a prominent part of our new teacher training. We're trying to also make racial and social justice, academic equity part of our core values as a teaching and learning team in all of the professional learning we offer, not just for our new teachers. So really trying to figure out how we can fold that in to everything that we do. And then I would just say the only other considerations we have are just thinking about the other professional learning opportunities that teachers have across the district. So our office is the office I used to work for, is the Office of Teaching and Learning, which is providing a lot of professional learning for teachers. We also have an office that focuses just on specialized services for students, a multilingual office. We have a curriculum office. So there are lots of other places where teachers are receiving development. And so we have also tried to collaborate with those other offices to figure out what training are teachers getting from those places so that we can figure out what gaps the induction program specifically needs to fill for those newest teachers. Our office also works on the new hire orientation along with the mentoring program that Nick is running. And so there's a lot of collaboration to try to figure out what conversation do we want to have in induction versus new hire orientation versus our teacher mentoring program versus our peer coaches. Our peer coaching program, we have about 70 coaches that work across the district as well. So there's a lot of that intersection going on that we want to try to make sure that we're aware of at all times so that we're covering all the bases, but also providing the most relevant content. The analogy I heard about it is like thinking about layering pieces of Swiss cheese, right? There are always holes in every piece of Swiss cheese, but when you layer all the cheese together, hopefully there's a solid basis of information that all teachers can find applicable and relevant to their practice.
Great, thanks very much.
Oh, sorry, Nick, was there anything else you wanted to add?
That was a really great response. I would just say in terms of mentoring equity conversations are hard. It's hard to talk about race, gender, culture, religion. And so how we have been thinking about how do we prepare our mentors and our coaches to be able to have those conversations in real time. We need to start calling attention to these matters when they're happening in the classroom. And we can do that through coaching and through mentoring. So this year we worked on some specific models in ways to level up the skill sets, knowledge, and ability of our mentors to be able to have those types of conversations and not let fear or fragility step in the way of that happening in real time. So I would just add that piece.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thanks very much, both of you, for your detailed answers. So our next question is, starting to get into the topic of interaction, like leaders' interactions with the mentoring program. So first we'll ask for Harrisburg. Throughout the year, how do LEA leaders check in on the needs of their mentors and mentees?
In Harrisburg School District, we have check-ins both at the building and the district level. So we have 2 monthly building-based sessions that are happening in all of the buildings in the district. And building level administration either attends those sessions or follows up directly afterward with the instructional coach or whoever facilitated that session to actively support and monitor the needs within the building. And then at the district level, the assistant director of the Office of Academics and his intern reviewed the mentor and mentee logs. So mentors and mentees would meet twice on their own, plus our 2 building-based monthly sessions. And all of those logs would be submitted monthly, and those would be reviewed. Attendance rosters for building-based meetings and reflection forms. And then we were able to provide constructive feedback and support. At the district level, they're able to monitor the completion of both the mentor and the peer observations. And mentors and mentees in our district were encouraged to really complete those required forms together. They had to do 2 peer observations, again, 2 monthly building-based sessions, and 2 mentor-mentee sessions. And then district level administration would review that documentation. We would all have that set up via Google Forms, and instructional coaches and mentors were able to provide additional information and supports needed and concerns at building level for mentee specific needs or building specific needs. So regardless of whether it was a mentor, a coach, a building administrator, or a district administrator, because we compiled all of this via Google Forms, all of their responses were available to us to really go through, reflect, and provide those specific needs for the mentees and mentors.
Awesome, thank you. And the same question for PA Cyber. How do LEA leaders check in on the needs of the mentors and mentees?
We also are able to meet with each other because, like Christy said, I'm a mentor and she's the mentee. So we were able to work together every month, completing forms similar to what we just heard, where we were talking about needs, questions that, the mentees may have. And then again, our goal really is just to help improve the practice through feedback, because communication is huge. I know Christy and I always talk about the induction program is there to support. I'm not her supervisor. I'm not there to supervise her. I'm there for a support for her. So I think building that communication and then submitting our forms to our LEA and then them going from there to see what's necessary. Christy?
Yes, so those monthly meetings were nice to sit back and reflect kind of where where teaching is going, what I might be struggling with or what teachers might be struggling with. But we also, met weekly too. I mean, it was more than monthly. I think that's really important for mentors to be, open, have an open door, like, hey, these circumstances that we have right now being in the pandemic and, just the way PA Cyber, is set up that we're at home, it's hard to get answers right away from specific people. So having that open door policy where you can shoot an email or make a phone call and having that open to get those questions asked and answered right away, I think is important as well.
Thanks. And also for PA Cyber, you've alluded to specific protocols that your school has for mentor observations, pre and post observation conferences, and so forth. Could you explain how these protocols help mentors to effectively support their mentees?
So we always hear this, reflective questioning with, again, the communication. What are questions that might influence or encourage, the new teachers or anybody to try to come up with their knowledge, their skills, their values, their beliefs, all of that tied in together. And then that mentor, again, to gain access to the teacher's reflections about their lessons, because that's important. Again, having that open line of communication was a big deal for Christy and I this school year.
Awesome, thanks. And anything else on that question?
I think Christy had something else to add.
Yeah. So also with PA Cyber, there's not a big like cumulative project for us, but like we do have different programs and different things that we work throughout the year. So one thing, all of the mentees are encouraged to join a professional organization. That you can, kind of relate with other teachers. You can kind of get the big questions asked, or, read some journal articles on where you're struggling in an area. We do needs assessments. What are the things that you need? How are things going? How do you see the rest of this school year going? From where you started to where you are now. We also, like I said, we do those monthly reports. I get it. The mentors and mentees get a chance to observe each other, coming from a brick and mortar school to an online platform, which a lot of teachers, are online right now. It's kind of like a foreign concept. I had no idea how I was going to teach, how that was going to happen. And it was really wonderful to be able to see what Angelica did. I was able to watch one of her teaching sessions. I'm like, oh, okay, I get this. I understand that now. So being able to model that has been great. We're encouraged to do different workshops, do different trainings, things like that. So that kind of encompasses the program as well.
All right, thanks very much. And we'll go into our last question now, and we'll also stick with PA Cyber as the first ones to answer this question. How does your LEA evaluate how well the mentoring and induction program is doing and make adjustments accordingly?
So again, the induction coordinator is the one, to assure that the induction program is working, so to speak. And they're the ones who we are submitting our things to, and they're looking at it throughout the school year. If things need to be revised, they'll do that as needed. Evaluations will include input from all the participants, though. Again, not just like we're talking about our building level or whatever. We are incorporating our supervisors in all of this, again, just to make sure that everything is being accomplished. Both the mentor and the inductee do fill out the end of the year forms, like Christy spoke a little bit about. And then that's a part of their portfolio as they're done with the program.
Some other things that are involved in that as well is data collection. Obviously, that's huge, and it is knowing what's working and what's not working. So surveys from the participants, surveys from the mentors and the mentees. What worked, what didn't work, different analysis of activities, and what resources do you have, what resources do you wish you had, what could make your teaching better, and align program evaluations. So, like I said, with surveys, questionnaires, individual and group interviews and surveys, those are all tools that are used to decide what is going well and what is not.
Thanks. And finally, we'll go to School District of Philadelphia with the same question about evaluating how well the mentoring and induction program is doing and making adjustments accordingly. And while they're doing that, for our participants, if you have any questions for any of our panelists, feel free to put those in the chat.
So I would just echo what was said already. We do a lot of surveying. In our office, we use questions that are these Howard Gusky questions that were intended to determine effectiveness from various standpoints. And so we've selected 4 of Howard Gusky's questions that we use in all of our professional learning, so that we're able to have a consistent understanding of participant satisfaction from all the different events. So we look at Induction specifically as a program, but like Nick will also survey from his mentor sessions, and then we'll survey from our new hire orientation sessions and our other professional learning opportunities. And then we look at that data as a whole as well, and look at how each program stands out in comparison to the whole. And we, of course, set goals for participant satisfaction in each of those question areas. So we do a lot of data analysis using those surveys as well. We also survey our mentors to see if they're, if the facilitators of these programs feel satisfaction as well, if they feel as though they were prepared in order to facilitate sessions. And we are always open to feedback from our facilitators. We have a lot of folks that are longtime facilitators of these programs. And so they've, worked with many iterations of teachers. They've seen the evolution of the content. So we're definitely always open to our longtime facilitators to see what additions they might have for us as well. And then we're also always considering the ways in which we're developing staff, just thinking about best practices in general for adult development, for emotional intelligence, for general learning. We're always constantly evaluating our own practice as facilitators and as content designers, session designers, trying to keep up with what is new, what other departments around the district and city are doing, and looking at what other districts, large districts like Philadelphia, are doing. And I'll pass it to Nick.
And Arena had a very good quote. Do you have the quote that you shared whenever we were first interviewed to do this panel, Arena?
I'll have to go check the receipts, Nick.
I can share it, and then how about I have you chime in?
Please share the quote. Please
so
share it.
Arena, when we were pre-interviewed for this panel, shared a quote, or it's a quote of her. It's a good reminder for everyone that there's no such thing as the status quo. We do have to always be learning and always be masters of our practice and developing that practice. Arena, anything you want to say about that little nugget?
I wish I'd put that in my dissertation. That sounds great.
Yeah, and to wrap up with that, I mean, our numbers spoke for ourselves. Our teachers loud and clear told us that they appreciate virtual learning. It breaks down barriers for accessibility, especially for our teachers who are not able to make it after school to professional development. Maybe they have childcare responsibilities or other things happening. So it's an accessibility issue when we think about virtual. And I just want to invite us all to, as we're kind of getting into the space where words like getting back to normal are being like thrown out there, I want us to interrogate that type of thinking in that phrase and start thinking, okay, we want to go back to normal, but remember, not everything was perfect when we were normal prior to this. So let's not throw everything out that we've learned over the last year and some change. There are some real virtual tools that we have now that we can employ at any point in the school year now. We don't have to just forget about all of this virtual learning and skills that we've gained over the last year, because that can really benefit our students if we're able to bring in those aspects moving forward and into the future. So I want to put that challenge on everybody's plate.
All right, thanks so much. So thank you again to all our panelists. I don't see any questions in the chat for them, but if you do have any, feel free to get them in there. And what we'll do now is we don't have so many participants. I know some people will be watching this recorded later. So we'll just break up our participants into 2 breakout groups for the next 14, 15 minutes to discuss a few questions. Which are here, and I'll also paste them into the chat. And we'll come back at like 1 or 2 minutes before 1, just to get, to regroup, and also to give you that screen that you need for the form, for the attendance form, those of you who are participants. So with that, let's break into the breakout rooms. There we go. Sorry about that. All right. So thanks very much again, everyone, for your participation. And if you have any follow-up questions about the resources we shared or anything else, my email address is here. And finally, the moment you've been waiting for you who are participants, we'll share the slide with the information about submitting your attendance on the Google form. So I'll leave that up for a couple of minutes and we will stop the recording there. Thank you so much again for your participation. And thanks very much for